Okay, this is Mike Franklin, a property tax guy, and today I'm going to talk about some recent inquiries I've had for the 2022 tax season. I've had some phone calls inquiring as to what I might be able to do for people. So I'm not going to talk about any specifics. I'm just going to talk in general terms about concerns. Um, the I had one case where the assessment seemed high. Um, the property owner had owned the property for many years, and probably 30 years, and the assessment just keeps going up and going up and going up. And so he called me, and he was concerned about that. And so I asked him if he could sell the property for what it's assessed for, and he says probably. And I'm like, okay, well then we wouldn't have an excessive argument. Can Are there other properties that are assessed for less, and that are as good or better? And he didn't know, so I took a look into it, and and there seemed to be a lot of sales for significant amounts of money that are nearby. But when you look at the assessments of those properties, they're selling for a lot more than what they're assessed for. And so, we have to look at. So I suggested that we look at five comparable sales and what their assessments were, because let's just say um, uh, let's just say they're assessed for 600,000 and they're selling for 1 million, and um, and they're assessing this guy at say 900,000, and so um, what we're saying is that yeah, he could probably sell it for 900,000. But based on that ratio, when other people are selling for 1 million that are assessed at 600, then that means that perhaps he should be assessed at like 550. And if his would sell for 900. So, question is, could it sell for more than 900? It's possible, um, but there's the other properties that it sold are slightly different. Like, for example, his waterfront, had some damage, and he hasn't been able to rectify it, from storm damage in previous years. So he's not 100% compared to these other properties. He also has a location that there's quite a bit of boat traffic that creates issues with privacy and whatnot. Doesn't seem to be a huge issue, but there is a difference. Also, his property is set significantly off the water, and some of these other properties are right on the water. Some of the other properties have big boathouses and things of that nature. And also, he doesn't have his own driveway. He has an easement issue, and the people that he has the easement through aren't there year round, and so he has issues with plowing the snow. And and if you have an easement with a neighbor, you better hope that you get along with that neighbor, because it can create legal problems, and but also it can stigmatize the sale if you go to sell the property, because who wants to get involved in all that kind of stuff? It can be highly detrimental, and so there's details of that nature. But also, his property has not been updated. He does need a roof. The landscaping needs to be redone. The kitchens and bathrooms are dated, and so that needs to be taken into consideration. So even though he can probably sell it for what it's assessed for, he may still have an argument, and so what I suggested was that let's see how things pan out. See if I get any other calls in the area. I really need to analyze the situation carefully. He may very well, have an argument, um, and so but it's going to require more analysis to see, how compelling an argument that we may have, and how much of a reduction would be reasonable under the circumstances. So we'd have to compare all those things, um, and but yeah, it's a tricky one because um, he admitted right off that he could probably sell it for what it's assessed for, but is it equal if everybody else is selling for more and they're assessed for less? And we have to look at exactly where the assessments were, at exactly the same time. So each property that's comparable. So I'm suggesting that we come up with 5 sales and look at the assessments and look at the sale, look at the details of the properties and compare it to this one, but also come up with 5 more non-sales of comparable nearby properties and see what they're assessed for, and see if there's an argument there. So so in other words, he called me because of high taxes and not necessarily high assessment, and but we have to get to the bottom of what's you know high taxes are high taxes, but is he assessed properly? And a lot of people aren't familiar with the process. The assessor is not getting the town more money if that property's assessment is higher. It's just a question of his percentage of the overall tax burden, and so we have to look at that. So that was that particular property owner and his situation. So at this juncture, I'm not certain if he has a case or not, and so I'll be following it more closely, and as we get closer to the grievance period, we'll make a determination on that. And I had another property owner bought a property, and he paid twice what it was assessed for. So they pinned the assessment of the purchase price as the assessment, and they're probably going to say that they're on 100% valuation, so they can do that. And I'm going to have to disagree on that. The I'm looking at other properties. This one is in very nice condition compared to a lot of the comparables are on there. But I just don't think it's appropriate to pin that purchase price in this case. Yeah, he should be higher than the other ones, but that's just too extreme. And I it's selective assessment. They just pin that purchase price. I just don't think it's appropriate. I think he has an argument there, but in that particular case, it's not an enormously expensive house. Um, but he's assessed at twice, more than twice of what everybody else is in the immediate area, and maybe his property is somewhat nicer than the rest of them, but I don't think it's more than twice as nice as the rest of them. But we'd have to look into that in more detail. But the thing is also that the tax rate at that particular municipality appears to be extremely low, and so I mean, if that were in most other municipalities in upstate New York, the taxes would be double what it is that they are. So even though they've got them assessed at double of what it is that well, no, he shouldn't be. His assessment shouldn't be half, but it should be maybe 30% less or something like that, 25% less. But uh, even though uh, his taxes are still pretty darn low, and so what is it that he's saving here? He's not, he can go in and argue it and spend it all this time, aggravation and really microanalyze the situation. But what is it that he's saving? If it were an egregious situation, I'd want to help him, but it's not an egregious situation. And it doesn't make economic sense for me to really get involved in the thing. So I'm going to have to advise him as to what to do, and he can decide if he wants to spend his time doing it. And so, but I think he's entitled to maybe a 25% reduction. Um, and but like I say, his taxes doubled, from last year to this year, and but the thing is, they're pretty low to begin with. So I got to double check because maybe I should move to that town because it's very low. Um, and let's see, I had another property where the it was assessed at about 25% higher than what it is that he paid for it recently. And so, there's case law. It's funny that uh, there's case law that says a recent sale, if at arm's length and not abnormal in any way, is the best indication of value at that time. And so he could make that argument, and technically they should reduce his assessment to, what it is that he paid for it recently. But the assessors aren't allowed to pin purchase price, which is the exact thing except in the opposite. And so, but that's what the case law is. And so I think he has an argument there. In that case, it's also not a very expensive property, so we're only talking about like $27,000 difference in assessment, and so you can make that argument. I think the argument is as simple as that. You don't really need to get into much of anything else, and either it'll fly or it won't. And I would suggest that he give the assessor a call and see if they'll just make the adjustment. You can take it's a very simple argument. You can do the same thing with the Board of Assessment Review, and there's no cost in doing that. It just takes time to fill out the forms, but it doesn't take long to do. And then if that doesn't work, you can go to Small Claims Assessment Review. It costs you $30, and you have to file it on certified to the county clerk, to the town clerk, and then regular mail to the county treasurer, to the school district secretary, and to the assessor. It's a pain in the neck. And then you got to schedule the hearing and everything. How much are you really saving? Is it worth it? It doesn't make economic sense for me to get involved in it. Again, if it was an egregious case and I thought that the taxpayer was being abused, I would get involved within it, even if it didn't make economic sense. But in this case, it's not egregious. And so I think the taxpayer needs to make up their mind if that's what they want to do. But I think I'm going to, just give them the information that they need to proceed with it themselves, because I just can't afford to. It's just there's just not enough money involved for me to spend hours of my time on this thing. So that's that case, and what else we have? I had another case where again the guy's assessment went up, but again I asked him if he can sell it for that amount, and he says probably. And it was kind of the same situation as the previous one I told you about. There are other sales in the area, and the assessments were lower. So, there's probably an argument to be made. But again, it's not an egregious situation. It's not outrageous. The guy does have a nice house, and he probably can sell it for that. So, I don't think he's being abused. So, what is it that you're saving? Um, Probably won't pursue that one either. But people call in and they mistake high taxes for high assessment, and it's worth looking into, and sometimes it is abusive, and if it is, then I'm very interested in getting involved. And um, but when you're splitting hairs, you just have to make that determination. But what I want to do is look at it and show them quantifiably, what it is that's going on, and let them make the determination themselves. I don't want to just say it's so because I said so, because that's what a lot of assessors do. I show them the comparables. I show them the data, and let them make their own judgment as to what makes sense. But anyway, that's the current the most recent inquiries that I've had. Um, and feel free to call in with any questions if you have assessment issues. This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy, 315-876-2262. Thank you.